Hello, my friends. Welcome to a brand new event organized by three communities: Data Zen, Pro Quality, and Data Quality Experts. Our collaboration offers places where experts from different areas of data and quality worlds could share their experience, talk about both the daily routine tasks and challenges they face, discuss most popular technologies, and interesting news from both domains. Today's guest, Kseniya Kochava, will talk about data quality and share her own path to this role. If you have any questions during the presentation, please don't hesitate to ask them in chat, and we will discuss them afterwards. There would also be Mentee Meter activity where questions could be asked too. Director's cut of the good, the bad, and the data quality is waiting for you. Ksenia, let me just say lights, camera, action.
Thank you, Maxim. So hopefully you can all see my screen. My name is Kseniya Kochava, and today we'll be discussing the subject of the good, the bad, and the data quality. As Maxim has already mentioned, the event is organized by three communities: Data Zen, Pro Quality, and Data Quality Experts. Later on in the presentation, you will be able to see a screen with the links to different communities, and there is way more material there. So let's begin. First of all, I'd like to introduce myself and tell how I got here. My name is Kseniya Kochava. I am lead data quality engineer. Around 9 years ago, I joined EPAM as a junior software testing engineer. I had a good and solid testing experience. I worked on testing desktop and mobile applications. I had some projects with database migration, but around 4 years ago, I joined a project with the data warehouse migration and ETL process testing. Back then, I didn't know these words, and apparently our team did not know who data quality specialist is either, so we had to reinvent the bicycle. It was a long process. I learned a lot during it, and I got very interested in the data quality as a sphere. So quickly, I started studying Python, I started working closely with the SQL, and I learned about the data warehouse concepts and passed few assessments, and here's where I am now in the data quality community. So within this presentation, I will try to share my path to data quality, and hopefully you'll get interested in it or you'll understand what it takes to become a data quality engineer. So let's move on. The agenda for today's call would be, first of all, what is data? Why is it so popular? Why there is so much buzz recently around every data job title? Then we'll talk a little bit about different data specialists that there are. We'll talk about the data quality, what it takes to become a data quality specialist. We'll look at the responsibilities of the data quality specialist, and we'll discuss the technical stack that there is. Also, I will share my path from the testing specialist to the data quality, and I will share a small checklist that you will hopefully find very useful. And last but not least, I hope that we will have a very productive Q&A session at the end of this call. So without further ado, let's begin. And as usual, we start with the Mentee Meter. This is the tool that you might be familiar with already, but if not, you can use this QR code on your personal cell phones, and or you can just type in mentee.com and use the code provided here. Within this screen, we will be able to interact, and I will actually see that there are people who are listening to me, that I'm not speaking in the void. So I encourage you to use the mentee.com because we will need that right in our next activity. To start off and to get a little bit of the feedback from you, I would like to know what data-related job titles you have already heard. It will be very useful for me because I don't know how about you. I personally have heard a lot, and every time I log in into any of the YouTube videos, I always get an advertisement to become a data specialist. So if you haven't heard it by now, you will probably learn about one data quality specialist right now. Yeah, right, I already see that. We have data quality engineers, we have data scientists, data engineers, data analysts. Good. Yeah, you know it all. So thank you for the answers. Let's move on. I should mention that we'll spend some time distinguishing between those specialties to understand what are the job responsibilities of each one of them. Hopefully that will help you to make a more educated choice and understand a little bit better. So the very first question that there is out there is what is data and how much data is out there and why is data so much buzz recently? Let's begin by looking into some very abstract numbers. By 2027, the use of big data applications is predicted to grow to 12 billion US dollars. Now, this is a lot. Businesses are trying to make profit based on the data that they have around consumer behavior. They try to predict different models and analyze how each of their investment returns and how cost efficient it is. So data is out there, data is everywhere, and we need to invest in data. If we're looking at the quality and the quantity of the data out there, I should mention that in 2021, there were around 79 zettabytes of data generated worldwide. If you don't know what zettabyte is, we'll get to that later. Just think of it something abstract and something huge. By 2025, this number will double. So there will be around 150 zettabytes of data generated. And if you know anything about the predictions, this one will obviously be exceeded. So there will be even more data out there, and even by the end of this meetup, we will have generated another set of data. The problem with it is not that we need to collect it, but also that we need to make sense of it. During the pandemic, there were estimated rates of data breaches increased by more than 400%. Outside that, there are a lot of issues with the duplicate data, with the corrupted data, with the spam. So we need to understand how to make use of it. Now, I have promised to discuss a little bit about zettabytes. This is something very abstract, and we need to find something more relatable to understand what it is and how much data is actually out there. Let's take something good. One of the best trilogies of the mankind, which is The Lord of the Rings, extended cut, 4K. It is 686 minutes long, or short if you're a fan, and it weighs approximately 234 gigabytes. Now, Lord of the Rings, if we estimate 1 zettabyte in Lord of the Rings, that would be around 4.3 trillion Lord of the Rings. This is a lot of data. And keep in mind that data is not only text, it's not only numbers, this is actually multimedia. And the companies need to make sense of all that. That is why data specialties are becoming more and more popular, and the demand for data specialists will only grow. So let's move further. As mentioned previously, you have already numbered a lot of data quality data-related job titles, and I'll try to make sense at least of some of them. And we will begin with the data scientist. Now, data scientist is actually the person who applies statistical analysis to create machine learning algorithm to make sense of the data. So basically, it will be some automation techniques or libraries to automate and to create predictions and to train machine learning models. Data scientists are the people who would be responsible for creating this analysis and different algorithm. But to do that, they need to actually have the data on their hands. And for that, we have data engineers. Data engineers are the developers, specialists who are responsible for creating, designing, installing, and maintaining all these data management systems that collect data, transform it, and store it. So the data engineer prepares the data for future use. Speaking of future use, we have data analysts. These are people who use already created data and perform different types of analysis and forecasting based on it. So the main tool for the data analyst would be dashboards and different business intelligence software. We will talk a bit later about everything that I mentioned here. And last but not least, or even most importantly, we have a data architect. Data architect is the person who is responsible for analyzing all the business requirements and system requirements and coming up with the data model for the structures of the database and the desired solutions and the applications. A data architect is the core specialist at every project, but without all of them, it wouldn't make sense. So the question that you might have is, if we have all those data specialists, why do we need data quality, and where is data quality in all this schema? And to answer that, I would like to switch to the following two facts, which I personally find very interesting and even funny, but they definitely seem very sad to someone. So The fact number one would be that in 1999, NASA has lost a Mars orbiter that cost 125 million of taxpayers' money, and it just plummeted into the Mars, going miles or kilometers within its predicted trajectory. Another fact is related to the beautiful city of Amsterdam and its citizens who receive certain support from the government, and it usually amounts to 100 plus or minus euros. And then 1 year, namely in 2014, they have received 15,000 euros. Unfortunately, it's not a fairy tale. The next day, they were obviously asked to return that money. But I wonder if you could apply your analytical thinking and try to understand what could have been the reason for all those issues. And to do that, again, I will ask you to go to the Mentee Meter and try to type in your predictions in here. So while we do that, try to think of not only these particular items, but bring back all your testing experience. What was the integration testing issues that you have ever come across? And yeah, bugs, obviously, or mistaken database breach, bad data, false data, human error, data format issues. Yes, we're getting close. Data format issues is definitely something that is the root cause of these issues. I will give you a small hint. We were talking about actual trajectory being miles or kilometers away from the predicted ones. And in Amsterdam, the amount of money that people were actually paid versus the one that they should have been paid was 100 times more. ETL issues, voice issues. Okay, yes, I see. A lot of very general answers. You're all correct in the sense that the measurement mismatch, exactly. Yes, this is the reason of all those issues. So in case of Mars orbiter, the team that was responsible for engineering was using imperial units, and NASA was using metric units. This is the actual cartoon that was printed all over the United States at the time. And in the second case, Amsterdam was using software in cents instead of euros. All of those issues are the result of not doing a proper data quality and testing at every single step. So outside, storing the data can bring you millions, but also any issues that are related to the data breach or data issues can make the company go bankrupt. So investing in data quality becomes a must, and it's part of the data governance that every single data-related company should abide by. So now that we have established that data quality specialist is the very useful person that wouldn't hurt any project, let's try to establish who this person is. This is someone who is responsible for ensuring the data which is used by the companies and the organizations is accurate and is consistent. This person works with the databases and with different data management applications and making sure that the data is corresponding to the expected results and to all the company standards. Later on, we will talk a little bit in detail about the data quality responsibilities, about the tool set, and I will try to make sure that you totally understand the difference between the data quality and the testing specialist. So let's start by describing what are the responsibilities of a data quality specialist. The very first thing that comes in mind is obviously data analysis or data profiling using the SQL script. SQL is one of the core responsibilities and one of the core toolset of the data quality specialist. You needed to validate that, for example, database was migrated successfully, that table was copied from one database to another fully, or that all transformation logic was applied. So data analysis and data profiling of the tables to make sure that they correspond to all the criteria is one of the core responsibilities on every project. Moving on, we have ETL process verification. Now, if you haven't heard the extract, transform, and load before, I strongly encourage you to read more about that notion because it is one of the core notions in the data quality and in general in the data sphere. It is how the data is processed and is consumed from the input systems and how it goes through cleansing, loading, cleansing, and all the different transformations before it is output to the target systems. Now, data quality is present at every single step. We make sure that the data that we receive is consistent, it corresponds to the expected structure, expected format. We check how it is cleansed at every single step, and we make sure that transformation logic that is applied to it before the data is output to the target system or target tables is correct. So ETL is something that you should get familiar with, and later on, at the end of the presentation, there will be a few useful links that will illustrate you where you could read about ETL. Now, talking about the target systems where we output the data, we should mention BI reports testing. It is also something that is present on many data quality projects. There are different tools for BI reports generation and testing, namely Looker or Tableau or Microsoft Power BI. There are many of them, and data quality specialists are usually responsible for making sure that the dashboard looks good from the front-end perspective, as well as from the back-end, that everything corresponds to the logic and that all the scripts are working as expected. Obviously, as in any quality-related job title, we have requirements clarification. Requirements is very important when it comes to the database testing, and very often to actually test that the data was transformed correctly, you might need to recreate the whole logic yourself, almost do the developer's work. So making sure that requirements corresponds to all the criteria of the good requirements is a must. Next, we have test artifact creation. This is also something that is in common between the data quality and testing specialist. We also have test artifacts. We also generate test reports. We create different test plans and different test strategies to make sure that we have deliverables that would illustrate the rules and the general guidelines how the process of data quality is performed on every project. So test artifacts creation also is very vital. It is not mentioned here, but data quality, as any other specialist, should be aware of software development models and methodologies, and where data quality falls into this notion. And last but not least, we have automation framework creation. Data quality testing is definitely not a one-time thing. It's something that should be monitored on daily basis and consistently. So we need to create a framework or some automation solution that would be doing that and generating us with the test results. This could be some very simple checks, like making sure that the data corresponds to some uniqueness parameters, or that we have a set of valid values, and it could be something very complex, like measuring how the certain metric is progressing over the time. So once we have established what are the responsibilities of the data quality specialist, I think it would be very useful to understand what is the actual technology stack that we are working with. Now, keep in mind that this particular slide, it lists probably one of the most popular tools and technologies that I used, but this is up to debate because there are obviously very different projects, and every single of them, one of them has their own tool set and their own set of technologies. So this is subject to changing based on the project. Let's start with the first and the most important is SQL. I didn't mention the specific database here because there are a lot of them. And what is important, if you want to become a data quality specialist, you should start by improving your SQL and making sure that it's on the advanced level. It is something that is absolutely must for this job title. So start with SQL, and then later on, if you need to use some specific database, it's mostly differences in syntax that you could easily adapt on the project. But advancing your SQL is a must. I would like to repeat that. Then we have a few of the cloud solutions. Again, there are different options, not only Azure or AWS, but we would also like to mention that it's something that becomes very popular, I'm sure, in software testing sphere as well, to get familiar and to actually understand what cloud is, what cloud providers there are, and what options do we have. I'm sure that many of you in your testing experience have already worked with, for example, S3 system, and already know what some of these solutions are, or maybe could name them. Next, we have Python or Java, or in general programming language. I know that there was a question already in the Q&A session, and by the way, thank you for taking your time and writing the questions in advance. I appreciate your interest to the subject. So there was a question about whether knowing a programming language is a must for data quality. And while it is possible that you might have a project where you don't need to create some scripts or use Python. It becomes almost a necessity nowadays. And it is, if you want to develop as a data quality specialist, this is something that you will have to learn and to do. The good news is that you can start by using some data libraries, such as, for example, Pandas, which is very user-friendly and easy to start with. For example, you can do that in Jupyter Notebook. There are a lot of different tutorials. And also, you can start with Python, which is a very, I would say, user-friendly and easy to start. So moving on from programming languages, we have many other tools, and I would try to briefly cover some of them. I've mentioned that data analysts work with different business metrics and business solutions such as Tableau or Microsoft Power BI or Looker or Kibana. These are some of the tools that help you visualize your data and track different KPIs. So data quality specialists work with these tools as well. We perform validations using these tools, or we can even build our own data quality reports using these tools. So this most likely will become one of the tools that you will often use. Then we have many tools that are project specific. I would say that we are entering the area that is more or less different from project to project. There are projects that use Hadoop. There are some where you might need to use Postman, a tool that is, I'm sure, familiar to you. Many projects use Databricks. You might need to use Kafka or Airflow for setting up your docs and in general processes. But this is again subject to different projects. So the good news is that there's always a learning process and that it's easy. There are a lot of tutorials out there and it's easy to start. But I would say that the first set of technologies that I mentioned there is a must for data quality specialist. And last but not least, I would like to for you to pay attention to the last items that we have here. Again, this is just an example. There was a question on the data quality assurance tools, and I would like to just bring a few examples on the automation frameworks that are out there that offer different data quality solutions, such as Great Expectations and AWS DQ. Again, this is something that is usually introduced in the project after careful analysis of the requirements and your project needs, but as data quality specialists, you will have to get familiar with different solutions and with different automation frameworks. So hopefully this data technology stack did not scare you off. I'm sure that you have already worked with many tools and know that there are many testing projects that have SQL or have some cloud solutions out there, so I'm sure nothing scary here. Now, the next slide would be just to illustrate what types of projects there are and where data quality specialists can work. So we can start with having some ML models testing, where data quality specialists would analyze the input data and the output data that the model generates. We can have some data warehouse migration projects that would be a more probably lengthy process where you need to make sure that everything is, again, depending on the type of migration, whether it's an easy shift and lift or there is a complex transformation that you might need to test the schemas and the compatibility and make sure that all the data is brought over and all the processes are reconfigured. Then we might have ETL process testing. This is one of the most widespread projects nowadays. This is testing how data is consumed by the system, transformed, and output. We have already covered this notion. I'm sure that you learned the ETL by now. And we can have projects with the dashboards verification, also very widespread and easy to learn. So this is just a few examples. There are obviously many more data quality projects, and in general, this job title is rather new, so it continues to develop and continue to grow, and the responsibilities of the data quality specialists are shifting with the time. So I might have mentioned the word testing a few times by now, and I'm sure that you already have a lot of questions in your mind of what is actually different between the data quality and the testing discipline, because it would seem that they have a lot in common. And you're absolutely right. The takeaway from this slide is that if you have worked for a while as a software testing specialist and you're considering switching to a different discipline right now, this does not mean that you completely abandon all your knowledge and all experience. No, actually, everything in software engineering sphere is very closely related, And having experience in different job titles and in different positions on the project actually makes you a more valuable specialist, and you bring all your background together with you. So let's probably look at what is common and what is different between the data quality and software testing. The very first item that I would like to focus attention on is obviously everything that is related to the processes. We similarly have estimations. We are all participating in the same software development process as everyone else. So we have requirements testing, we have test artifacts design, and we have different output artifacts as well. So this is something that will be absolutely similar between the two specialties. We have boundary values testing. This is probably one of the types of the testing that is one of the most useful when it comes to database testing, because we have different parameters that we should analyze. We have boundary values, and we have similarly equivalence classes when it comes to migration and input and output of the data. And there is integration testing. Integration testing is also very important because there is a lot of input from third-party system and there is output, and every single place should be tested and covered with data quality verification. And last but not least, communication with stakeholders, communication with the team. There is a lot of that in every data quality discipline as well, and in software testing. So let's look at something that is present in the software testing activities that is not present or maybe not so widespread in the data quality. We will begin with the compatibility testing or testing on different devices. This is something that is not present because data quality is mostly about the backend logic verification. So very rarely you will have a project where you should actually use some mobile devices or some different environments. Speaking about the acceptance testing, localization testing, or graphic user interface or usability testing, I would say that these types of testing, they can take place in data quality discipline, but they would be mostly applied to some BI solutions, and this would be dependent on the project. So if you're not a fan of backend logic testing, then data quality discipline has that a lot. I would like to stress your attention that there is very little of the user interface or some usability testing. Last but not least, we have performance testing, API testing. They have an asterisk which indicates that it can take place in data quality because we also can have some API integrations, and the performance testing is also important when it comes to like dashboards and in general how system works. But again, probably this is not something that is performed in every daily life of this specialist. Now, something that is specific to a data quality engineer that is not present in the quality assurance. First of all, data metrics. This is the set of metrics that is applied to the data to make sure that it's corresponding to every standard. All those metrics, the links to the metrics I will also provide later on in the useful links section, but you should keep in mind that every data should be consistent, data should be complete, it should be unique, it should be accurate, it should be valid, and it should correspond to the criteria of the timeliness. Data metrics are responsible for these criteria, and we need to make sure that data abides by those metrics. Then we have BI reporting tools. I have mentioned that for a while, but this is something that is very typical for data quality discipline. We have ETL testing, we have big data concepts. Now, not every single project is a big data project, but it's useful to understand what it is, what is the notion of a data lake, and how it is, what's the difference, for example, between the database and how it works in general. It is also useful to understand some of the ML basics, to understand what is machine learning in general, how it works, and like the direction in which it's developing. Again, we have cloud solutions, and last but most importantly, we have SQL and we have automation frameworks. Again, with asterisks, because I know that a lot of testing projects have SQL and they might have automation as part of their activities, but I would stress that on the data quality projects, this is an absolute must. This is the case of something that would absolutely be present. So once again, the takeaway is that you already have some of the knowledge and you probably have seen a lot of the items mentioned here, so you have a good background and a good understanding to bring in into the new sphere. So on our next slide is the promised checklist of how to become part of the data quality engineering team. And I would try to correlate it with my own experience. As mentioned, I worked on one of the data warehouse migration and ETL testing process projects myself. And I faced a lot of challenges because I didn't have the proper background and proper understanding of how to approach such a project. So I know that everyone has a very different background. Some of you have worked on the project with the SQL, some of you have only worked with it during some trainings or some self-study material. So what's important is to analyze your skills and your project experience and to evaluate what's missing from what was discovered earlier. Within this presentation and also using many available EPAM different links that provide you with the criteria for becoming a data quality specialist and in general the skill set which is required, you can easily assess and identify what is missing. What are some of the areas that you should focus on? Maybe it's something that you can do within your project, something that you can get familiar with, like some technical solution or better understanding of how data flows are organized on your project. So I personally realized that I need to improve my SQL knowledge and I need to get better with the programming languages. And that's what I did. I attended a few courses and I started improving self-studying to improve my SQL for the current project. Next, we have to start learning what I just mentioned, SQL, Python, getting familiar with some of the data dictionaries like pandas. Again, highly recommend to look for different trainings that are around pandas and around Jupyter Notebook because they can provide you a quick and easy understanding of what data analysis is and how to work with different data sets, because definitely we don't only need programming languages to create some sort of automation framework, but you also need it when you're working with a large data sets that are impossible to analyze and to perform anything in a manual mode. So start learning SQL, start working with the Python or different programming languages. This will only be useful for your future development. Then we have a theory on database fundamentals and getting familiar with big data definition, what it is and what types of data is actually considered big data. It is very important to understand like the theory on the database fundamentals, because most of us usually think about database in terms of the SQL and just writing some queries, but you need to understand the structure, the types of the databases, how it works and what different types there are based on the business needs and different user models. So get familiar with it. There is plenty of material out there. Start by investigating and take a look at the database and data warehouse fundamentals, and it will help you to better understand role and part of the data quality specialist and the rest of the data engineers within this discipline. And then we have a lot of available training materials and mentoring programs, as well as data quality labs that company provides. I personally participated in 2 trainings, which was a data quality basic and data quality engineering level. I would say that these programs provide you with a good background and a very solid technical knowledge, as well as practical experience and understanding of what it takes to become a data quality specialist. And also, there are data quality labs out there depending on the location and on the region where you're currently located. So I would say that it took me around 6 to 8 months to complete all those 4 steps. And within this time, I just got better understanding of what data quality is, that I'm really convinced that this is something that I would like to do, and this is something that I would like to tie my future career with. So after that, once you get the understanding that this is actually interesting to you, that you like this activity, I would advise you to contact your local community head who is responsible for data quality direction and discuss it with your resource manager, and in general ask for pre-assessment and make sure that you have different guidelines in terms of how to improve or what are your next items. There isn't a single solution all that would fit everyone on this call, because again, every single situation is very different. Some have worked with software testing, have worked on their projects related with the databases, but not everyone. So for me, it was, I would say, easier to get interested in this sphere because I had a similar project in my testing experience. But again, strongly encourage you to try and to follow these steps. It will only prove useful. And the promised useful links that we have here is the actual competency, level up and skill metrics. These links are EPAM internal. They are very useful because they describe the daily activities and in general what data quality specialist is and what toolset is required from data quality specialist. Then we have the links to the basic level and intermediate level mentoring programs. There is a lot of material which is available in self-study mode. I strongly encourage you to start looking through it and getting familiar with it. And a few external links for those who are interested. We have a data quality course, which is, again, walks you through what are some of the main notions. And we have data quality dimensions, something that I've covered earlier that would help you understand what actually quality data is. I hope that all this information was useful to you, that at least you got an understanding of what data quality is and whether it is easy for you to move from the software testing to the data quality. And if anything, we will have a Q&A session right now. I know that there were a lot of questions asked on the portal before, but feel free to enter the questions here. We will try to cover as much as possible within the time that we have now. So, Maxim, I will probably ask you to assist me with the questions.
Yep, sure. Thank you, Kseniya, for such a nice presentation. Yep, as of now, we have 13 questions. So let's go through them a bit. I believe some of them were already answered, but anyway, we'll come from top to bottom. Do you check the quality of both SQL and NoSQL?
Apologies, I was distracted. Could you say that again?
I'm also a little bit. Do you check the quality of both SQL and NoSQL? I mean, it's something like relative and not relative databases. I don't know what they mean.
Maybe I didn't specify that good enough, but data quality is present not only in terms of like checking the actual data. It's about every single step of the process. So you're not only working with a database, like be it relational or not, you're also checking, although that is a core part of your responsibilities, but you're also working with the, you can work with some input sources or output sources. This is also part of your responsibilities. And also, once again, as I mentioned, yes, we work with different multimedia. You can work with multimedia and with any other data that is out there. So it actually depends. It varies based on the project. There are very different projects, even from what I have seen, and my experience in data quality is, I would say, rather limited at this point.
Okay.
Maxim, I would suggest that we maybe switch between the questions from the portal and the questions that we have here.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah, so right now we have a question about the job demand. Will there be any problems when the hype subsides? It is possible that at some point, as we have seen before that with the bubble and the crisis that was in the 2000s, that something might happen that will affect the data sphere. But as of now, I do not see any indication of the interest to the data dying down, because vice versa, we're getting more and more data. This data is duplicated. This data is contains a lot of spam, basically a lot of information that is being gathered from the users worldwide, and we need to make sense of it on a daily basis. And it just becomes more and more actual from what I have seen. I don't see any decline in the interest in the data-related sphere. I would say that vice versa, because this discipline is rather new. I mean, data quality discipline is rather new. Very often it's hard. You need to educate the project on the data quality specialist, who it is, and why the project needs to hire this specialist. So no, I don't think that there will be any problem when if there is any decline in the data-related sphere. And not to mention that, once again, in software engineering, you can start by educating yourself on one of the subjects. You can grow further. If, for example, from data quality specialist, you can become more interested in becoming data analyst or in becoming data engineer. Actually, there is no, I would say, useless knowledge. Every single knowledge is useful. So hopefully I've answered the question. Maxim,
definitely. Thanks. Let's then go to the question from our community page. Uh, how to become data quality engineer if current position is manual functional tester. I believe it more or less, or even more, has been already answered. What
Yeah,
do you think, Ksenia? Yeah,
I believe
let's then.
so, but just to
Mhm. Yeah, sure.
reiterate, it again is dependent on the location and your background. So start by looking through all this quality technology stack because you will have to study it anyway. It would help for you yourself to understand what knowledge you have already and what technologies you need to get familiar with. And later on, you can approach your resource manager and you can create a plan of what it takes for you to become a data quality specialist. You can pass pre-assessment and you can get like a list of recommendations or at least an understanding of what level you can apply it to.
Okay, yeah, let's pick the one from Mentee Meter then.
Yeah. On the Mentee Meter, we have a question about the Python as programming languages. How about Java? What language is more popular to use? From my personal experience, and again, Maxim, feel free to correct me, I would say that Python is more popular on data related projects. There are still projects that have, for example, Scala and different other programming languages. But if you have learned Java, of course, outside some of the very painful syntaxes that is different between Python and Java, it would be I wouldn't say easy, but it would be definitely not hard for you to switch to Python if you have a demand for that project.
Yeah, I would
But
double
again,
double
Maxim,
it.
correct me if you
Yeah.
have different experience.
Nope, thank you. I just would double your answer because it's uh, anyway more or less what I see from my perspective. Let's move to, oh, we have 15 questions. Let's go a little bit maybe quicker. Any plans for evolving augmented data quality as a part of augmented data management from Gartner? Oh,
Uh,
that's
Say
a
that
good.
again. Any plans for
Any plans
involvement?
for evolving augmented data quality as a part of augmented data management from Gartner? It's like,
Um, I don't. It's hard for me to answer that question actually because I don't fully understand what's exactly um, within it. If we're talking about the data quality discipline in general, it is constantly evolving and it is constantly becoming more technical and more automated and using more solutions from the data quality assurance tools and like in general this is just the beginning of this sphere, so it's obviously very developing, but I don't think that the manual parts of this work will ever go away because there is still a lot of analysis that should be performed, like in terms of the requirements and so on and so forth. But in terms of the tool set, obviously, there is such a wide range of tools that is used based on the project, and I'm sure that this discipline is just the beginning. Maxim,
okay,
anything to add?
yeah, let's. I would say like just it's not the questions that I would say could be fully covered here at least, and it's pretty specific. So you need to be at least uh, acknowledged with this stuff like Gartner. So I would not add anything here. Let's move further. It does not look like a question. It's more like artificial intelligence is eating data quality right now. Okay, let it be so. Maybe it's a
Like I
question
said,
like,
I don't believe that it would be fully substituted, or because still there is a lot of human factor in every single of the software engineering discipline that we do, and there's someone has asked previously whether I see any chance of data quality discipline declining. Do I see any chance that we will be substituted? Not yet. Not in the next few years, at least.
yep. So some basic stuff definitely could be replaced. But anyway, we are already using tools more or less automated. And, I'm also thinking that artificial intelligence, we will fight a bit with it. Anyway, what do you, oh my gosh, there, the questions are moving. I could not catch them. It was a definition of augmented data quality, usage of artificial intelligence for the data quality, quite a lot of articles on that. I see. Cool then.
Definitely. Like I said,
Yeah.
a lot of different data projects with different tool sets, and some of them are more developed, and for some, so it actually varies. You will get a chance to get familiar with different technologies, and if you want to develop further into some of the disciplines like you can move further with the data science, with the data analysis, many tools out there.
And yeah, anyway, our like answers are somehow related to the experience we had. So, for example, I have no experience with artificial intelligence, so it's like hard to estimate it or do something like answering for these questions. Pum pum pum. What do you enjoy the most during your work? What you dislike? How the process of changing primary skill looked for you? Was it difficult? It's already four
It was
questions in one.
definitely,
Yeah.
yeah, it was definitely difficult for me because I had to challenge myself in technical discipline a lot. Um, I had some experience with automation before, but it became a must in data quality. Also, I needed to. I think the reason why I still did it and why I enjoyed it so much because I liked working with the backend logic and I liked verification and in general like working with the data with the more structured like the most structured parts of the application. And also I like finding all those inconsistencies and what I like particularly about. So yes, there were a lot of challenges, but before you start integrating yourself into these disciplines, it's hard for you to answer whether you would enjoy it, whether it's something that you like or not. So even if it seems hard, I would encourage you to start doing that.
Yep. Okay.
I think I didn't answer what is my least favorite part. Um, Hard to say because really sometimes when you meet with a complex solution or with a complex task that you don't have an answer to, you immediately become less motivated and less sure that you can actually do that. But I don't think that there was a challenge that as a team we didn't solve, so still a lot of learning curve here. Probably, Maxim, we can switch to questions on the Mentee Meter. What types of test automation frameworks do you use? In my experience, on my project at least, we use AWS DQ, and also as part of the research, we looked at the Great Expectations. This is something very project specific and depends on what requirements you have, because the parts that was missing in both and that we needed for the project was some visualization of the results. So this is something, plus not all of the checks that we would like to apply, despite the fact that these frameworks have a lot of ready solutions that are easy to integrate and use, we still lacked and have to do some workarounds for our specific project. So I would encourage you to actually look and to study more of the cases using different test automation frameworks. And if you're interested in this subject, this is definitely something that you could leave in the feedback section, and we will find maybe different speakers who have worked with different frameworks. I know there is a lot of material by now on those platforms, but still, we can invite speakers with different backgrounds so that they could give some overview of these tools.
Thank you.
Maxim, back to you.
Yeah, let's go further. Is it data quality engineer responsibility to prepare test cases and defect reports?
Yes, this is pretty much part of the responsibilities on the project that I work with. I wouldn't call it test cases. It would mostly be like test scripts that we prepare in Databricks on my project. But similarly, since the idea of the data quality is to make sure that data is accurate, the data can have and the process can have issues that needs to be reported. So we also create result reports and we submit them to data engineers for fixing and for verification. Data quality engineer is just as integrated in the process of the development and testing as a software testing engineer.
Thank you. Let's go further. What we have? What kind of skill sets, knowledge does one need to become a data QA besides the QA knowledge? On what levels does one need this? From which profession or field? For example, on basic level, DevOps, data engineer. Once again, so we've partially covered this question. I don't know, would you like?
I hope that I have covered it. And also,
Yeah.
again, encourage you to use EPAM tools if it's internal usage for making sure that you understand what is the skill set for each of the levels.
Yep. Do you have info what is the actual demand for data quality engineers? For example, is it easier to find a position as a data quality than as a quality assurance? That's a good question. Anyway, like the level of demand is something that is anyway dealt on a high level. and is monitored on high level than we are now. I mean, like Kseniya, for example, me. And I don't know the demand for QA. You know, I could talk about demand for data quality engineers because I could see them. I'm just monitoring it. So I would say demand. There is demand. So the level of it, you should go higher. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
it is definitely
let's.
a more narrow discipline, but still there is a growing demand for data quality
Yeah.
specialists.
Yeah.
The particular one depends on the region and on many other criteria. So, Maxim,
Yep.
I think we have a next question, which is what defines a senior data quality
Let's go.
engineer, and are there any particular skills that you would need to perfect to become one? Probably, as any senior discipline, not only data quality specialist, senior indicates more mature and more experienced in processes, in tool set, and is the person who would be able to analyze and to come up with solution, who is responsible for organizing everything. But not something that I would cover within this presentation, though, because it might become too detailed in a sense what's different between senior and middle and junior specialist. I would rather focus more on what's difference between the data quality and testing. Again, strongly encourage you to use the useful links.
Okay.
Maxim,
Okay.
would
Yeah.
you like to add anything?
Nope. Nope. Thank you for your answer. Let's go further. How normal day of data quality engineer usually spent? I do believe we partially also answered it about like
Yeah.
what is good about it. What do you like the most? So if you want to add anything, feel free. But I'm just
I think it
going.
depends on the processes that is used on the particular projects. Like on my project, we work in sprints, which means that we have a separate assignment each of the days of the sprints. We have different activities like planning, like retrospectives, and it is something that is very similar if you have worked in software testing before, and if not, I encourage you to get familiar with this in general software development models and methodologies and this cycle. But as everyone, our day starts with looking at some of the test result reports that have already been run by the tests, checking what tasks are in different statuses, and on the, in general, like a lot of project specific items that is different from project to project.
Okay. Thank you once again. So we have like 5 minutes left. So let's go quicker. How to ensure the quality of data can be maintained consistently, even after doing all levels of testing.
Yeah, as I mentioned before, data quality is something that should be measured over time, and I would start by analyzing what is the business requirement, like what are the metrics that the business is paying most attention to, what are the core metrics, and coming up with the automation framework that would be running those checks and showing them, for example, over the period of time versus like some median value and comparing it. So very specific, but I would say that yes, understanding the key points, understanding the key metrics, and monitoring them on daily basis or whatever it takes. So analyze your project requirements and your deployment model, and in general a lot of technical details. But I think that introducing automation framework is the answer to that. Maybe even building some dashboards in BI systems to monitor that easily and to get a better view.
Okay, let's go further. So we have several questions that were, to my understanding, covered. So I'll just name them. Does data quality engineer needs to know programming language? It's answered definitely yes. The level of knowing it is a question, but anyway. Then what is the percentage of project which needs SQL or Python as per current market? I would say it also send us to the question about demand and so on. So anyway you will need SQL because it's like a structured language to work with data, and Python is also using kind of its own version of it. Want to add anything?
No, I think that was covered.
Yes. Could you tell about data quality assurance tools? Boom, boom, boom. What do you think?
That sounds like
Big question.
Yeah, like a big question that we just can't answer by just naming some of the data quality assurance tool. I mean, there are different. There are Artifactor. There are some of the sub solutions. There is EPAM accelerators, but this is apologies.
Bless you.
Again, Maxim, please.
Let me just. Okay, what we have else? We have 2 minutes left, and anything about data build tool and testing there. Have been working with it for 2.5 years, and they call it a transformation core of the modern data stack. You know, like, I believe, did you have anything to tell about it? Because like working with it for 2.5 years, maybe you could share with us your experience, the question. I mean the author of question, and come to us with presentation. Why not? What is the best way to make sure that the data is the same in databases from different providers, for example, in S3 and Oracle? So,
Maxim?
yep.
Yeah. Could you
Yeah.
please answer that?
Yeah, sure. So anyway, you know, like you need to somehow think of whether way to connect them, you know, possibility to compare data on different layers, like usually in S3 buckets, it's like NoSQL data. It's like not, as far as I remember, not relations. In Oracle, it's usually stored in relational DBs. You could also use some tools for it, and just, you know, Google always helps with it, and I just don't remember the perfect tool. Let us maybe answer it later. Most of the projects now are ETL, not ELT. Snowflake, Databricks, BigQuery, etc. Still. Oh, that's, you know, great question, but, you know, it's definitely hard to answer it because I'm not working on all the projects and most of the projects. It's something also that should be looked from the higher perspective. So yeah, thank you. Do you need any cloud knowledge? If so, would it be in data? Synapse for Microsoft or so? Yes. So for cloud, usually, yeah, data quality engineers are working with different types of cloud, like AWS, GCP. Maybe I would not say, you know, like which is the most popular, but yeah, you would need definitely on one like point of time or another. So mainly, I do believe I've covered the questions that left, and we do not have time left. So if you want to have an answer to a question or mistakenly I've missed them, just drop an email to us or chat and so on. We will try to answer it as deep as we could. So thank you once again, Kseniya. Thank you so much for your presentation. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for joining today's event. Please don't miss the opportunity to show your gratitude to our speaker after event ends. Rate the event, give a badge on community page if you want, definitely, and fill our feedback form. You could also follow ProQuality and Data Zen on social networks and stay tuned with us. Bye bye.